So you mentioned at a couple places, the Bears are setting Justin Fields up to pass more. I would agree, but I think one thing that's interesting is that this team overall had the most rushing yards in the entire NFL last year. And when you look at the running back room, there's just no investment anywhere.
Mhm.
But I think we'd all agree there's going to be fantasy points scored from at least somebody. We have Khalil Herbert, 6th round pick. Deonta Foreman, 1 year, $2 million. Roschon Johnson that you mentioned earlier, he was taken in the 4th round. The way I'm at least seeing it right now is Khalil Herbert's probably getting 15 carries a game. Foreman gets 7 to 10 carries. And then Roschon Johnson might touch the ball every now and then on the ground, but he's mostly in there for pass catching. And then later in the season, if Roschon Johnson plays well, he eats into a little bit more of the rushing workload. But that doesn't really make anyone super sexy in fantasy. How are you viewing the backfield? I want to buy into Khalil Herbert, but without the pass catching, it's hard for me to kind of rate him as more than like a 7th, 8th round pick in fantasy.
Yeah, and I think if you look like when you start projecting the Bears offense, Khalil Herbert looks to be the clear RB1, and he looks like he's going to lead the team in rushing. But for whatever reason, the staff just hasn't really been in on Khalil Herbert, despite leading the league in rushing yards over expectation last year, just putting up all of the nerdy metrics that we as fantasy guys just love to see. They never really lengthened his leash. David Montgomery was still the guy. So that's my concern, is that Khalil Herbert was drafted by a different GM for a different head coach. And I'm not sure, as good as he is, as good as his vision is, as good as his burst is, that he is really a good fit for this offense. So for them to go out and sign Deonta Foreman and then for them to draft Roschon Johnson, I think they're kind of setting themselves up for the future. But, a lot of people kind of scoff at the Bears not investing anything in their running backs. But isn't this the smart thing to do? Like, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth where everybody's making fun of the Lions for drafting a running back and making fun of the Falcons for drafting a running back in the 1st round. Well, the Bears are just saying this is a non-premium position, and we know that we can just churn through this group of guys and get our production there. So I think it's pretty savvy. That being said, when you start looking at ADP, I much prefer Roschon Johnson over the rest of the guys. He's looked fantastic so far in the preseason, even despite missing some early parts of camp with an injury. If there is anybody that's going to possess elite upside, it's going to be Roschon Johnson. Now, Khalil Herbert, if everything works out well for him, he might be a top 15, top 20 guy, if all the chips fall right. But I think that Roschon Johnson, giving his pass catching upside and his tackle breaking, which is translated immediately into the NFL, as we've seen in the preseason, I think he could secure the RB1 role, and then having the abilities as a pass catcher as well, I think set him up for the highest range of outcomes. So he's a little bit cheaper in drafts, and he's the guy that I prefer the most, even though Khalil Herbert's probably the slightly safer pick.
Catch more of the conversation only on the 33rd Team Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts.